Welcome back to the broadcast, and this is the maiden edition of Front and Center here on NTV, where every Thursday we shall be taking a look at the biggest political and governance issues in the Republic, the most important issues that you are talking about and trying to make sense of everything for you, breaking down the trends, the numbers, and the issues, especially of this election. And we start today, 46 days to the election. And joining me in studio to try and break down some of these issues is lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. I've also with me policy analyst Sylvester Kasuku. Thank you, sir, for joining me. Also in studio with us here on Front and Center is lawyer and political analyst Joy Mdivo, as well as lawyer and political strategist Dr. Alutalala Mukhwana. Thank you, lady and gentlemen, for joining me on this maiden show. Dr. If I can begin with you, and tonight we're just taking a look at the state of the race, 46 days to the election, barely 7 weeks. The running mates have been picked. The IEBC has cleared the 4 presidential candidates. From where you sit, what is the state of this presidential race?
Well, thanks Ben for having me, and a very good evening to all the lady and gentlemen here. We haven't met in quite a while. In terms of the state of the presidential elections, I do not know whether your question is in terms of how tight the race is or how prepared the candidates are, but I'll pick either.
All of it.
All of it. We clearly have 2 very strong contenders, and anybody else doesn't deserve a comparison. We have 2 strong presidential candidates in the name of Dr. William Ruto and His Excellency, the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga. For quite some time, it was clear to everybody that Dr. Samoei Arap Ruto was leading the pack, at least going by the numbers he was pulling and going by the time and resources he has evidently put on the ground. Honorable Raila Odinga appeared to play catch-up, but with the entry of Honorable Martha Karua, if increasing number of crowds is anything to go by, there seems to be a steady climb in Honorable Odinga's pace towards a presidential seat. Right. That's my preliminary take.
Joy, what is your initial take? Has anything changed over the last few weeks, whether it is because of the picking of the presidential running mates or the campaign, the campaigns across the country? Has anything changed from where you sit, or is it still a very close 2-horse race?
First and foremost, thank you for having me on your show, and congratulations on a new show. I think one of the things that is evident is first and foremost the whittling down of the candidates. Remember, there was a time there was the fear that we're going to have the 56 people on this booklet of a ballot paper, but after the initial winnowing, what we see is 4 people have been left, having been cleared. Of those 4, 2 are clear front runners and 2 are clear maverick candidates. One with the mantra for, almost social decadence, for lack of a better word, and another one on the holy path to righteousness.
Well, he has quite a following, and we'll get to that at some point.
It is true. One of the things that I think Kenyans have understood, that in this season, there is a lot of entertainment to be had from the political shenanigans. So there is a difference between genuine supporters and curious onlookers. And so there are times when people come just to see, the spectacle. When you go to show and there's this kichwa bila mwili, everybody goes to see what this is all about. So some of these candidates, if somebody was to take a pen and he has a son and he's thinking that I'm going to vote to legalize cannabis, and one of the biggest problems we have in our school these days is drug abuse. I mean, it defies logic. Yeah. But in terms of a spectacle, it's a good show. But for the 2 front runners, as far as I'm concerned, the choice of running mates brought 2 different energies into the campaigns. So into one campaign, the Raila Odinga campaign, it energized the sleeping base of the urbanites who are reformers and were thinking we have 0 ticket here. So they're thinking, okay, fine, maybe we have a reform ticket. And that's why you find in that campaign right now, Martha Karua is basically the face of the campaign because she's bringing with her this Martha wave.
All right.
However, on the other side, DP Ruto with his pick of Rigathi Gachagua, his strategy was different. He's still trying to court the mountain and show them, you know what, with me, this is your safe bet. And he's picked somebody who's a strong man in the mountain. Well, the rest of the country may not really get him.
All right.
But when it comes to vote for vote, I think he hit the jackpot with Rigathi, actually.
Kipchumba, let me come to you. You tell me your thoughts on that. And pundits, especially foreign pundits, have labeled Kenyan elections as never, judged or influenced by issues, but rather by the political, party figureheads and a lot of money that goes around during this season. Do you think anything has changed? We have seen a kind of an economic agenda from all the political sides. Have we departed from what traditionally have been Kenyan elections?
Yeah, thank you, Ben, for having me in the new show, and congratulations for the debut. I think what we must give the Ruto ticket, 2013 all the way, is that they tried as much as they could to introduce issue-based politics. And in the last election in 2017, they really hammered the issues. It went down to the issues, and that has been deepened now by the presence of UDA. It moved to Kenya Kwanza, because you have seen us going to the extent of trying to do town halls at county levels, which is a way of doing civic education and other things. It is a way of making sure that we run away from the politics of identity and the ethno-majoritarian kind of democracy to an issue-based kind of a politics. I know we might not be in that table yet, but the strides that have been made is a good way to go. Because look at even when Martha Karua has come on the fold of Raila Odinga, she has tried to run that ticket on the issue of anti-corruption and integrity, while the other side is running on an economic reforms and the bottom-up kind of thing. So at the end of the day, we have to give it to the political sides now that we are trying to run politics of issues. And that is why each side is balanced in terms of the tribal arithmetic. If you go to Kenya Kwanza, you will find there are people who come from Luo Nyanza in that ticket. If you come to Azimio, you will find people from Rift Valley in that ticket. So at the end of the day, it is not so much about the person, but we are trying to largely see the policies behind the people. Right. And then again, Ben, even if you go lower now, if you cascade that to the county politics at the lower level, you have seen debates where governor candidates, gubernatorial candidates are trying to engage on issues. It is no longer about my clan or my sub-tribe and your sub-tribe. At least this election, and I think why it has gone that way, as a person who participated in the election, there is not so much liquidity in this election.
All right.
So with the lack of proper financing from the kind of the liquidity we have in the nation, people resort to trying to be creative and bring issues on board so that you can sustain the electorate.
Sylvester, in the next 46 days, Kenyans will be going to the polls to elect their next set of leaders. More importantly, their 5th president. Where do you think we stand as a country as far as this is concerned?
Thank you very much for having me in the show. First and foremost, I would like to say that this election is quite a unique one. Also considering that we are first realizing that politics should actually be guided by certain principles, of governance. And what Kenyans are looking for is actually what you can call good leaders, because Kenyans are naturally good people. And as the formations are taking place, you've seen that there's what Kenyans are saying, that there's the trooping of colors, or the like terms are coming together. The reformists have come together, and the credentials that are presented in the ticket of His Excellency Raila Odinga and Senior Counsel Martha Karua does present what Kenyans have actually been looking for. And it equally qualifies so, because these same people have really been the driving force, among others, to bring reforms into the country and actually to make government more accountable. All right. On the other side, of course, we have a mixed grill of what we could call people who belong to the system that was being reformed, but they were not willing to be reformed, but they ended up being reformed anyway. But even if they adopted the ingredients of the reform, we might not tell, but we can still see that some colors have still stuck very high. Right. So what I would like to say is that the trooping of colors have occurred, and Kenyans have a chance to elect a ticket that is going to manage the economy appropriately. Okay. But again, going forward, we've seen that policies are currently being spoken about, and I know that we are going to talk about that. And we will be able to see how some of the...
we'll get into the policies, we'll get into the numbers as well, where these numbers are coming from. But I want to pick up from something you said. Joy, do you believe What is your take on this narrative of the reformers versus, like you said, the other side that is, I've tried to inform them and they have not succeeded? Is that the narrative on the ground?
That's the narrative according to Azimio, obviously. But one of the things that I think I do agree with Sylvester is that everybody is trying to get an identity other than tribe. And that is a good thing in my opinion, because it's moving us away from organizing on our lowest common denominator, where we were born or whose last name we bear, which was actually a very nonsense way of organizing people, because there was no idea, there was nothing. There's just that collegiality of belonging to one homogeneous group. So that's one thing that we are breaking as a country, and I think it's a good thing, because we have to start competing on the basis of ideas. The thing you have to give credit to Kenya Kwanza for is that by starting with their bottom-up story really early, they also demonstrated that, you know what, we are not interested in the old formations. This election is about the economy.
Right.
With the coming in of Martha Karua, then a second prong came out. Okay, it's about the economy, yes, but it's also about the freedoms, anti-corruption, where we've come from. So they brought in the historical aspect. So you have people who have this nostalgic, you know, guys have earned their stripes, they've been around for a long time. Then you've got all these other young people who, they're not so young anymore, but all these people who are part of, like he says, they were part of the old order, but that time they were young people basically, you know, running the ropes, and now they've decided it's time for us to come into our own.
Right.
So you've got the oldies versus I hate to say they're youngies because they're not very young.
They're not.
But you've got these people who are trying to say, you know what, you guys have been around for a little while, let us try and do this different. But caught in the middle is a Kenyan who has to decide what their priority is moving forward into this election. And I thank God because of that dichotomy, because it's actually a clear choice.
All right. Doctor, tell me this, before we get into the issue of the running mates and the numbers, according to what pundits and what the data researchers have been coming up with. Let's talk about the Wajackoyah effect, the so-called Wajackoyah effect. We are talking about the two front-runners, Raila Odinga and William Ruto. But then here comes this man with a lot of university degrees, and he seems to have marshaled a part of the Kenyan demographic. And what is your take on this so-called Wajackoyah effect?
Thank you, Ben. Allow me to comment on what my learned counsel said, and partly what Joy has said, that there is a gradual shift from politics of the tribe to a politics of issues and policies and manifestos. Whereas I agree to a large extent, I am glad that he put a caveat and said that we may not be on that table yet, but that is the shift that is emerging. Even when these manifestos are pronounced, even when these policy issues are pronounced, we see an underlying ethnic mobilization even towards the alliances. So that you see, whereas you'll have Honorable Raila Odinga wanting to bring in the Martha Karua, why is it that he brought in Martha Karua and not any other person? Why is it that Honorable William Ruto will bring in Gachagua and not any other person? Why is it by coincidence that all the running mates are from central Kenya? It's not a coincidence. It's because the primary voting bloc still remains ethnicity. So yes, it is a good move, right, and we must give it to Kenya Kwanza for having drummed up the issue of bottom-up economics all along. Indeed, it is not the first. Honorable Raila Odinga has been talking about reform for the longest time he has lived in this country. But I agree with the two speakers, right, that yes, there is a gradual shift towards policy-based politics as opposed to having tribe as the center of it all. Now, allow me to say something about Professor Wajackoyah. You know, Ben, in all descriptions, when you look at the economy, when you look at the state of politics, when you look at joblessness in this country, right, we are at our lowest. We are at our lowest. That unga is costing now 200 shillings per packet, we are at our lowest. In fact, the thing that has saved this regime is that there's no credible opposition today compared to the yesteryears. If there was a credible opposition today, the son of Jomo would not be sitting in the State House pretty as he does today. Now, when a nation is in distress, there is a tendency to emerge characters who target the lowest of the low in terms of mobilizing votes.
Right.
Now, Professor Wajackoyah has come with a very interesting dimension to it. He believes that this thing the lawyers call a Nasoli, Bangi, would be the silver bullet in turning around the fortunes of this nation. Now, when he promises Nasoli as the silver bullet, he's actually appealing to a certain demographic in this country. The sad thing is that it appeals to not only the adolescents and the youth, it appeals to those who may not even vote in 2022, and those are the children who are in school. The economic side, the examples he gives, he has done his research. Yes, there are countries where cannabis sativa is legalized. He says he wants
to use bang to sell, not to smoke.
Well, how you'll take it from your shamba and not smoke, I do not know.
No, it's the same way women brew changa to sell and not...
Thank you, thank you. So the whole regulatory framework around it is unacceptable. But the thing that worries me is, number one, that the seat of the presidency is supposed to bring dignity and honor to that office.
Right.
The president becomes the figure and the symbol of unity for the country. I'm not so sure that by preaching Enasoli, that unites the nation. It targets the youth, and when you're in a crisis, remember this youth, by the way, Ben, in 2017, they were given very lofty promises. Do you remember the story of the laptops? Do you remember the story of the 16 Stadia?
Yes.
So the youth are now saying that, look, we have been promised so much. This is practical, because every youth would identify with smoking bang.
Okay.
And if this is a drug that you can sell, why not? And so Professor is identifying the lowest of the low at the crisis point.
So the question is now, what is the net effect of that? And Kipchumba...
Allow me to finish the net effect. The net effect is this, and one must worry about it, that the demographic that is targeting is actually the demographic that Honorable William Ruto was targeting. Honorable William Ruto's hustler, bottom-up economic model amazed the youth. And Ben, I don't know whether you have been in any rally, especially the city rallies. I've been in the city rallies. I don't know about the country rallies. But you can hardly go into a rally and fail to sniff bang being smoked in that rally by the youth. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the risk is this. Is it possible that given the low level we are in terms of the economy, could Professor Wajackoyah be appealing to the youth of this country, and therefore could that eat into the hustlers' demographic population, and therefore affect the final 50+1?
That is my question. That was my question to Kipchumba. What do you think? Is Wajackoyah now becoming a strong third horse and eating into the hustler nation?
Ben, as somebody noted when we began the discussion, the horses are already defined in this race. And as one, I think it was a newspaper in your sister company, the Nation newspaper, ran where Wajackoyah was seen carrying the horse himself.
Carrying a donkey.
Carrying the donkey himself. And he was part of the race, but the other two candidates have horses, and he's running with his donkey on top of his head. But back to the germane discussion here. I think there are few issues that as pundits and as political scholars we need to delve into as to why the Wajackoyah candidature is causing a lot of hot hair. Number one is that we need to encourage the Wajackoyahs. I know he comes out as a crude candidate. I have no issue with how he projects his issues. That is his right.
You're not worried.
I'm going there. I'm going there. But why I will encourage such a candidate to come is because down the road, Dr. Alutalala will come and say, my candidature is built purely on devolution. He will speak to devolution and it will enlighten Kenyans. Tomorrow, Joy Mudiva will come with our candidature strongly on the tax issues. It will help us widen the base of civic education. But now when we come to the germane issues, number one, why the Wajackoyah ticket has got traction is because over time, the political formation in this country has not changed. So that people want something new. And in that something new, you might not find it in either two camps. But here comes somebody who says something that nobody thought about it. And a friend of mine was telling me, Wajackoyah thinks as though the box doesn't exist. When the other two camps, people are thinking outside the box or thinking within the box. Wajackoyah has taken thinking as though there is no box in itself. So at the end of the day, this bubble might not last into the election day for a simple reason, Ben. An election from where we are, there is the getting out the vote. This is where now mental conditioning of the voter is done.
Right.
This is where now the subliminal messaging on the tribe and the fears of those selling the Muguruki and what have you is done. Wajackoyah will not get to that level. You know, in political science, we say that there are those stages.
All right.
By the time we get to protecting the vote, Wajackoyah will have fallen off. Because this thing of ganja and what have you does not find a holding in our formation for a simple reason. The reason is this. Our social fabric is made such that we meet either in a funeral, in a church, in a wedding or somewhere. So at the end of the day, where this thing of Wajackoyah can be said and the discussion can be enhanced is in these campus clubs or along Langata Road in those clubs. So what that portends is, and we reflect on the register. Recently, the status of the register was revealed.
Yes.
The people, the youth are 36%. There are 5 million Kenyans who have not registered to be voters because the eligible people who can vote in this country are 27 million people.
Right.
So with these 5 million people, are these the people Wajackoyah is attracting? But the other thing also, you need to ask yourself,
Right.
the people who carried donkeys in the races before Wajackoyah, there was a Pius Muiru somewhere. They used to be
Abdu Badida.
Yes, there was Abdu Badida. And even
Some people are
Karua,
saying that,
Martha Karua
that
came.
Wajackoyah is a more serious candidate than
No,
the
no,
ones
no,
you're
no.
mentioning.
Ben, there is something also I need to go also so that we help Kenyans as scholars when it comes to this panel. There is the normal market forces. If today you are to make bank or marijuana to be legal, first of all, you will have destabilized the demand curve. So that the bank that you buy today, which is sold in the back street of Nairobi, it will be sold in the front street. You will be buying it outside Parliament. So
fair enough.
At the end of the day, that will have
point.
killed the idea that you can pay Chinese loans.
Sylvester, tell me this. What some political conspiracy theorists are saying that it could be the plan of the Azimio One Kenya with the backing that it has from government functionaries to sponsor Wajackoyah to destabilize the hustler votes. Is that far-fetched? What is your take on this?
I would like to say that that particular theory is far-fetched. Maybe it should be actually considered the other way, that it could have been actually the hustler trying to get
their own votes.
Not to get their own votes, but actually to use that narrative to make sure that they deny Azimio any more hearing. And then the false bottom-up narrative, which is actually trying to escape from realities of this society. For example, issues of fighting corruption was now supposed to be dissipated. Because you realize that these other two candidates are not talking about corruption, they are not talking about how to manage resources in this country and how to create wealth and actually, yes, in real terms. If you tell people that I'm going to give you 150 billion, and when you do calculations, you realize that Mama Mboga is supposed to be getting 800 shillings a year, which is actually nothing in terms of what they expect to build their business. Because we've done those calculations. Every time they make pronouncements, we make calculations. In what they're promising, Mama Mboga will be getting 800 shillings a year. Divide that by 365 days a year, you just know that they are getting less than 50 cents. So what I would like to say is that the conspiracy theory might actually be on the other side. But the greatest thing that is happening is that Kenyans are now getting more and more alert. And they are actually realizing that there are issues which must be handled. Number one, corruption. Number two, issues of integrity with regard to a leader's ability to be able to lead people truly, rather than creating mirage, or rather than trying to deceive people, or rather than trying to trip over issues. Like I've seen a video today in which Sosion was in a show today in the morning, castigating the CBC thing, and he tore it down, only for them to go to the education charter that they were doing, and for their principal to say that we are embracing CBC and we are going to follow it and make sure that that's what is going to deliver. And then if you look at what, in that same Kenya Kwanza, Mudavadi was out in the field some time back in the recent past, and he was tearing the CBC, and he was saying that they are going to throw it out wholesomely. So you wonder, therefore, where they're reading in policy.
All right.
So the conspiracy theory in what I'm seeing here is to create confusion in this election, away from real issues that are actually being championed by us.
All right, I want to finish on this because we don't have a lot of time.
Just a rebuttal. When people are watching this show, there is a lot of tremendous wisdom that's supposed to be here. So I want to keep the equilibrium at par with the expectation of the viewers. Number one, when we talk about bottom-up economic model, I have been fortunate enough to visit a few of those things. It is not about the politics. It is about the problem the people are facing. It is no longer viable, Ben, to just talk about politics of I am here, I will reform this. Okay. It has to come to the individual. The second issue is on the issue of CBC. Kenya Kwanza was crystal clear today, and if you read their charter on education, they said they'll review CBC. Because just like any other system, there are shrapnels which needs to be cut out and weeded out that are not made for our kind of a system. So at the end of the day, we really need to understand when we talk about bottom-up. Number one, we have said in Kenya Kwanza that we have no business with fighting corruption because the Constitution of Kenya has built independent institutions. What we need is just to strengthen them. The social justice sector
education has institutions at the same time. So
we have the office of the DPP. What is the role of a president? And the chairman of Azimio Council one time told the country, "Munataka nifanye nini?"
Point taken.
So where has he gotten the power today?
What he has brought forward actually needs to be put straight. He's trying to meander in the issue of fashion. What is actually being said by this team, and I'm glad to actually realize that the colors are true here on the table, that where there are institutions, you do not need leadership commitment. That's what he's saying. Which means that if the institutions dealing with matters health, then you should not tackle it. But if there, if there are institutions dealing with matters education, you should not tackle it. So if there are institutions dealing with corruption, so they want to escape from it because they know that is their biggest skeleton.
I want you to have the final say on this.
They must come out and carry their skeleton with them.
I get your points, Sylvester. I want you to have the final word on this before we leave this.
You know, I'm listening to Sylvester and I'm actually quite amused because when we're having such discussions, it's important for us to separate the wheat from the chaff. Now, today, actually, I found myself in that that education charter. So I was with some professor, and he says, "Come, let's go to this thing." And I sat and listened. And one of the things that I actually was impressed by was the fact that this document, you present what you want, it is sort of negotiated, and then you arrive at a conclusion and a decision. And then what you arrive at as at the conclusion, somebody reads and said, "Is this a agreed text?" You say yes, and then that is what you sign off on. So if somebody had come thinking, "I'm going to abolish CBC," then he's told, no, CBC is fine, but 1, 2, 3, these are the bits that need helping. If you can help us with this, actually the rest of this we can make work. It only makes sense to change your mind about issues. But that said, I think as a community, we need to come to a place where, and which is why I like how elections are going this time round. Let Wananchi tell you where the shoe pinches. Let Wananchi tell you what is hurting them, rather than what we imagine hurts them. Okay. The reason I'm saying that is because in our previous elections, of which I've been a participant, I must admit, we have had this thing of we imagine we know what the problem is, and then we imagine we'll tell the people what the solutions are. This time round, what I'm seeing is more and more Kenyans. Even when you look at your voice pops when you're doing interviews in the streets, Kenyans are very articulate. They know what ails them, and they have an idea of how to solve their problems. And I think if politicians have the humility to stop and listen to Kenyans, they will find that, by the way, even manifesto writing becomes easy, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Finally, the Constitution was very front and center about public participation. Right. We've even had legislation about it that has been mooted. We have had court decisions about it. Having people participating in deciding the direction that the country should take is not an idea that we can wish away. Okay. And in this election, it will become also not just a battle of ideas, it's also a battle of approaches. Because on one approach, we are still using the old order of, you know what, this is what we're going to do for you, this is what we're going to do for you. I know I'm listening to Sylvester saying 800 shillings is nothing. I'm thinking, do you know how much money?
I have not used the word nothing.
Do you know how much, 50 cents a day? Do you know how much money people Fuliza? I mean, guys, Fuliza, 50 bob. As in people...
And then you want to give them 50 cents.
People go to Okash and they use that for business and they pay it back at the end of the day. People just need a little
right.
bit of a push
All right.
to get where. So as politicians, we
want
need
us-
the humility
Ben,
to listen to the people that we purport
Ben,
to
allow
lead.
me, if you allow me just a
Secretary.
minute, on this issue of corruption, which my brother Sylvester spoke about. I think this idea of saying that one side of the divide is not fighting corruption, and the other side of the divide is fighting corruption, is flogging a dead horse. Show me which side of these two coalitions, allegations of infidelity to the law, corruption have not been leveled. Show me which side of these two coalitions people have not been mentioned. High-ranking officials in either side, in NYS, in KEMSA. So I think somebody should advise either side that talking about corruption as the mantra upon which you'll seek votes is flogging a dead horse.
All right.
Nobody's clean either side.
All right.
Of pots and
I want
kettles.
us to take a look at one. and-
Then I think before we just finish the education thing, I want to remind Kasuku that just a day ago, Martha Karua is talking about increasing bursary. Raila Odinga is talking about free education. Which kind of confusion are we talking about?
All right.
So when it comes to education, they need to just, as a candidature, they need to talk about one thing.
All right. Sylvester, don't say anything.
I'm waiting for him.
I want us to take a look at one final thing before we end the show, and that is the IEBC and its readiness for the elections. We've seen several issues being raised over the last few weeks. The issue of the no manual voter register, the issue of the technology, election technology. Let me start with you, Sylvester. Is the IEBC sufficiently prepared for the elections from where you sit?
Looking at realities, it seems like the IEBC has actually been running out of time, and their level of readiness is actually wanting. Number one, on the issue of technology, I believe they haven't been able to get a credible technological framework to address the election. And we've seen that in the past. We had the election system, particularly the Kimskit and the other things, actually collapsing by 10 a.m. And I think they are preparing the country maybe for the same. If they do not prove that they've actually improved beyond the level of preparedness that they had last time. And I want to say that they looked more prepared last time than they are now. Number two, the controversies that are now emerging, that they are not going to have other mechanisms of verifying the validity of a voter that has approached a polling station, is now worrying, considering that, what about if the technology fails? And the systems go off because maybe there are no power backups and all that. Okay. Does it therefore mean that they are not going to be able to verify? Does it mean that certain parts of the country can actually be disenfranchised?
All right,
voting?
thank you.
Number
for that.
three,
I need to,
on issues of results transmission,
because of time.
if that system also fails and there is no availability of digital transmission, it therefore means that we again have to resort to the manual systems that used to be there.
All right.
So that particular
not
situation is worrying, and IEBC needs to come out clear, and they need to address these issues before we reach the polling day.
Joy, is IEBC ready for the election?
No, they're not. They need to start giving us daily updates of what they're doing, because it seems, I agree with Sylvester, they're actually running out of time. There are some numbers that don't make any sense. We've got 22.1 million voters. We've got 46,000 polling stations. If we put 700 people per polling station, they wouldn't go beyond 33,000. Where's the extra 14,000 coming from? We've got a situation where not all the country is covered by the 4G network. So those places that are not covered, what's the backup? Who's providing that facility? This is information that the parties need now so that we make preparation. Look at the numbers that they also released today. The demographic of the youth seems to have shrunk, but there's some places where you're seeing the numbers are looking rather large. So they need to start explaining what's going on. And if I was Chebukati, I would have an official every single day with a status of preparedness report released to the public. We shouldn't have to ask these questions. They should come forth with their information.
Dakshari, we need to wind up. What is your take on IEBC's readiness?
In 2017, when we were fighting about when they were fighting about the results of the election, there was an amendment in the Elections Act that was hurriedly made. And the effect was to say that where the electronic system failed, the reliance will be made on the hard copies, and that will be final. I'm not aware that that has been amended. Now, here is IBC, knowing very well that that law is in existence, telling us that we shall rely on technology. Aren't you just preparing us for slaughter?
Yeah.
Number two, Dr. William Ruto, together with Honorable Raila Odinga, when they met the EU ambassadors some times back, each one of them raised worries about IBC. For example, Dr. William Ruto said that about 1 million of voters in his strongholds are missing from the register. Something that Mheshimiwa Chebukati associated with, but said those 1 million voters represent the number of those who had been transferred. Recently, there was an outcry about illegal transfers. That hasn't been sorted.
All right.
Another nagging issue is this. The Constitution anticipates an accurate, verifiable system. Incredible. How is it incredible? Thank you. How is it verifiable when, from what Majende was saying, that when you vote, it's archived?
Yes.
So how do you verify? How is it verifiable?
So, all right. Kipchumba, let me get Kipchumba's final thoughts because of time.
On IBC, I will just talk about Chebukati must comply with the law. Chebukati must comply with the existing jurisprudence that has emanated from our courts. On this sense, Ben, when you read what my senior is alluding is Section 44A of the Elections Act, it says that there must be a complementary system of the register. So you cannot complement a digital register with another digital register. It can only be complementary when we have the manual register. So at the end of the day, when we shout in these media houses about Chebukati being ready, we are not castigating Chebukati. We are talking about the future of the nation. Therefore, the last thing that I would like to talk about IBC is a simple thing, Ben.
30 seconds
we have been told
30 seconds only.
We have people who have breached the register. Yes. The offense has been identified. But we have not seen an offender being taken to court.
Thank you.
Where are we working towards?
Let's leave it there.
I think as we close, the most recent issue is how IBC is deploying returning officers and presiding officers.
Yes.
It looks like there is something that IBC is not telling people about what they are preparing us for.
Thank you.
So they need to be impartial, they need to attend to the true nature.
We have to leave it there because of time.
Unfortunately, we need more time for this show.
We really need more time. Yeah. We do.
Yes.
Thank you, my panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Alutalala Mukhwana, lawyer and political strategist, lawyer and political analyst Joim Divo, and policy analyst Sylvester Kasuku, as well as lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori for gracing our inaugural show here on Front and Center. We will get more time, I promise you that. That's why we leave it on this show. We will continue every Thursday after the news to try and make sense of what's happening in this country in politics and in governance, to try and break down the issues that matter to you. My name is Ben Kitili. Remember, the 2022 WRC Safari Rally Kenya is back home, and all roads this weekend will be leading to Naivasha for the action. Remember, the Nation Media Group is the official media partner of the showpiece, and if you cannot make it your way down to Vasha, you can catch all the action right here on NTV. Immediately after this show, we will be bringing you day one highlights as 8-time world champion Sebastian Ogier grabbed the overnight lead in his Toyota GR Yaris to stay ahead of the likes of Thierry Neuville, Ot Tanak, and Sebastian Loeb on the leaderboard going to Naivasha. Details next. I'm Ben Kitili. Good night from Nairobi.